All aircraft inbound to Sun and Fun via the Lake Park or VFR. Arrival procedure, welcome.
Boeing RV over the power plant, Rocky Wayne.
All aircraft inbound from the lake, follow I-4, need you a half-mile in trail. Make the left turn at the golf course in between the water towers, Cake Tower off your left, Golf Ball Shake Tower off your right.
21 downwind turn base. Start your turn.
Tail dragger, keep the speed up, slide all the way down the runway, tail dragger, all the way down the runway, at or after the orange dot.
Low wing, turn your base, you're clear to land runway 28 right. Start that base low wing, right-hand turn, all the way around to direct the orange dot, you're clear to land on the green dot. Great job, low wing. Welcome to Sun and Fun.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2025 Sim and Fun NOTAM review. My name is Evan, one of the co-founders of Flight Simulation Association, and I'll be here hosting today's presentation and giving you a little bit of a walkthrough of what this is all about before we actually bring on the expert and we get things started. So welcome in to those of you joining us for the first time this evening, and welcome back to those of you who joined us on our earlier stream today, where we were talking all about the launch of Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 and what that's meant for the community. Great discussion that we had with a number of panelists and content creators, news website folks from around the community sharing their perspectives, and had some great chat and some great questions and great discussion going on earlier today. Good to see you, JT. Good to see everybody else in the chat. You know, it's a busy time of year for us here at Flight Sim Association, and as we give people just a couple more minutes to jump on the stream and join us, I wanted to just give you a couple of updates on what all has been going on around here and in the sim community, and some of the exciting things that we have coming up, starting of course with Flight Sim Expo 2025 happening June 27th to 29th at the Rhode Island Convention Center over in Providence. Let me know if you're coming to the show. If you're watching on the Flight Sim Association YouTube channel, there's a poll there in the chat. If you go out of the full screen mode, look at the chat, you should see a little poll. You can go ahead and vote on there and let us know if you're planning to be at the show in person, if you're still making your plans to attend, if you're planning to watch it online. Let me know what your plans are for Flight Sim Expo 2025. You can fly right into Providence, quick connecting flight from pretty much any major hub. You can fly to Boston's Logan Airport. From there, you've got options on the train, you've got the bus, or you've got the ability to rent a car, take an Uber, rideshare, and you could even fly into New York, fly into Washington, and take the Amtrak from there. Super easy to get to, and we're looking forward to a big event. A little more about that coming up later on in the stream today. Meanwhile, at the same time, we are here looking at venues for 2026. We put out a survey for 2026 a couple of days ago, so if you haven't already, have a look in your email for that link, and you can vote on that and tell us where you think the show should be. We should have that booked here, I'm going to guess, in the next, probably 5-6 weeks, so we can announce the location and the dates on stage in Providence as we always do. And then we've got Lelystad Flight Sim Weekend coming up in about 2 weeks from now, which I'll be there for. Looking forward to seeing a number of you out at that show. And the Real Sun and Fun, which we're also going to be at the beginning of April. We're going there. We'll be at the Bueller Hangar in the just right across from the 727 there, pretty much right by the main entrance. And the whole purpose of that is for us to go there and showcase home flight simulation to the 200,000 pilots that'll be in attendance at that show. And we had the A350 from AnyBuilds come out just a couple days ago. So it has been a crazy couple weeks here in Flight Sim, but all good stuff and all super exciting. So let me share just a couple of quick updates for you happening around the Flight Sim Association community. First of all, like I said, with Flight Sim Expo coming up on March 29th at 5 o'clock Eastern, 2100 UTC, we will be sharing the initial reveal of our first exhibitors for 2025. Usually a really exciting stream. FS Elite will be with us. We'll probably have a few other media partners and content creators joining, but that'll be the first time that you get to see the 50 plus exhibitors that are already registered for the show. I'm hoping we'll have a few more even by that point, so feel free to put that one down in your calendars. It'll be right here on our YouTube channel as well, so youtube.com/FlightSimExpo. March 29th, 5 o'clock Eastern is when we will be revealing the first round of exhibitors for our show in Providence. And for those of you who don't know us at Flight Simulation Association, our goal is to just help increase the profile of home flight sim, especially when it comes to real-world training, when it comes to pilot proficiency, and when it comes to helping folks discover new ways of just enjoying their flight sim experience. You can join our association for free. You can also join as an FSA captain. It's a $4 per month annual build subscription that helps us cover the costs of doing things like webinars and going to Sun and Fun and going to Flight Sim Weekend. But also you get a ton of great perks, including free Orbix products, a digital subscription to Flying Magazine. Over 60 different partners are on our website. You can save, including a new thing that we just announced earlier today, We now have a partnership with Odyssey Aviation, which is a group that's trying to help those who are in flight sim just discover some new aspects to the simulator. And so included in that FSA Captain subscription as of now is once a month you get emailed a new custom flight plan to adventure somewhere in flight sim. And so it'll tell you where to go, tell you what the challenge is, give you something interesting to look at. That also includes custom scenery for Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, and it's totally free if you are an FSA captain. So scan that QR code on the screen that you see over there, and you'll be able to get that linked to your FSA captain account if you are already a captain. It is totally free to you and just another way to be able to explore new aspects of your simulator. So we're going to talk now about Sim and Fun. Let me play this trailer real quick to give you just a quick teaser and taste as to what it is we're all talking about. I'll come back and introduce the concept, and then we'll bring Kevin on.
All aircraft inbound to Sun and Fun via the Lake Park or VFR. Arrival procedure, welcome.
Boeing RV over the power plant, Rocky Wing.
All aircraft inbound from the lake, follow I-4, need you a half-mile in trail. Make the left turn of the golf course in between the water towers, cake tower off your left, golf ball shaped tower off your right.
Going on downwind turn base. Start your turn. Start your turn.
Tail dragger, keep the speed up, slide all the way down the runway, tail dragger, all the way down the runway, at or after the orange dot.
Low wing, turn your base, you're clear to land runway 28 right. Start that base low wing, right-hand turn, all the way around to direct the orange dot, you're clear to land on the green dot. Great job, low wing. Welcome to Sun and Fun.
So there it is. That is Sim and Fun, a quick idea of what it is that we're going to be talking about here today. For those of you who need a little background on what that all is about, first of all, let me start talking about PilotEdge. So for those of you who haven't heard about PilotEdge, PilotEdge is a way for you to add real human air traffic controllers to your flight sim. So you spawn up a flight, you open up the PilotEdge software, and you dial in the radio frequency of ground or clearance delivery, and you call them just like you would in real life. It is a paid subscription service, but the advantage of paying for it is you get guaranteed coverage 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime that you want to come on and fly. And most, if not all, the controllers on there are current or former real-world controllers. So that means you're getting the best of the best when it comes to coverage, as well as that guaranteed coverage. PilotEdge does a number of cool events throughout the year, and one of those events is this one we're talking about today, which is Sim and Fun. So to understand Sim and Fun, the PilotEdge event, you first have to know what Sun and Fun is. Sun and Fun is an air show, sort of like Oshkosh's AirVenture. It's one of the biggest air shows in the world, and like I said earlier in the stream, we're going to be there promoting home flight simulation. You'll see exhibitors from real-world aviation and all across the aviation industry, from airlines to flight schools and everything in between. And at this event, there's like 300,000 pilots who will fly their own airplanes or other vehicles into the show. And to make all that happen, of course, you need procedures and you need some special things. You can't just have that happening at a regular airport. And so they've established these special procedures for the fly-in. And to help pilots understand that, the Real Air Show actually is encouraging you to go on PilotEdge, get your flight simulator going, and practice. And so Sim and Fun allows you to do that with the real controllers who actually work the traffic in your flight simulator. Now, of course, you don't have to be a pilot and you don't have to be going to Sun and Fun to do any of this. All you need is a PilotEdge account, and if you've never actually subscribed to PilotEdge, you can use their free trial. It gives you 5 hours of network time or up to 2 weeks from the time that you sign up. So you could sign up today for that free trial, participate in the experience that we're talking about, and not have to pay for it. Of course, you could also pay for it and help them out and be able to enjoy the PilotEdge subscription for the rest of the year. But this procedure and this webinar that we're talking about is designed to get you geared up for that. So again, whether you're a pilot and you're flying into Sun and Fun, or you're a flight simmer and you just want to get that experience of flying into Sun and Fun and talking to the real controllers and doing the procedures, we are here to help you get geared up for all of that. So in order to follow along with us, here is the URL that you need. There'll be a QR code you can scan as well later on. We're going to be walking through the NOTAM, which is accessible to you from pilotedge.net/siminfun. And of course, you'll be able to see all the details about the event, how it works, and more at that URL. And Kevin, who's going to be joining me here in just a second, is walking you through everything you need to know based on the document that you can download from right there. Like I said, we're here to present today's presentation. I'll be here with you in the chat to help grab any of your questions and share those. So if you're watching with us on YouTube, you're watching on the PilotEdge YouTube channel, pop your questions in the chat anytime. We may answer them right away. We may save them till the end depending on how things are going, but we will answer each and every question that you have. So please feel free to speak up if you're not sure what PilotEdge is, if you're not sure what Sun and Fun is, if you are not understanding a portion of what we're talking about, let us know and we'll be happy to get those questions answered. And of course, everything we're covering here today is for home flight simulation purposes only. So even though it's based on the real event and even though it's the real controllers, of course, what we're talking about here is designed to get you ready for the PilotEdge version of the fly-in. But I'm super excited to see that the real show, Sun and Fun, is actually encouraging pilots to do this. You know, it's a big mission of ours at Flight Sim Association to bring real world and virtual together. And so seeing that there's a big air show out there that's dedicated to aviation and they're going out and saying, yeah, you guys who are flying in, go practice this in advance, use PilotEdge, that is really refreshing and really fantastic to see. So I think with that introduction in mind, I'm going to bring on Kevin, who's going to walk us through the procedures that we need to know about for Sim and Fun and correct anything that I may have said wrong. So Kevin, I'm going to hand things over to you to walk us through the 2025 Sim and Fun NOTAM review.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And you didn't get anything wrong. I think it sounds great. And we're just going to dive right in. We've got both, well, actually two of our three NOTAMs here. If you please, make sure you're following along too. Make notes, electronic, print out, whatever you need, whatever you're comfortable doing. I've got our Microsoft Flight Sim 20 and 24 NOTAM on the left and the X-Plane 11 and 12 NOTAM on the right. We'll just kind of be going through them side by side here. They do mirror each other. And of course, we have our FSX and prepared NOTAM as well available for those users who are using that. They do mirror each other. There's just going to be some differences, sim specific, not procedurally, just setup wise. So we're just going to dive right in and get to it. So we've got some table of contents. By the way, if you have joined us for our Sim Venture events, for our Oshkosh version of this that we've been doing for 5 years now, that is kind of where Sim and Fun derived from. We had so much success with that. We said, hey, let's just do it with the second busiest and biggest air show with Sun and Fun, and Oshkosh being the first, Sun and Fun being the second. So as Evan mentioned, it is the actual controllers that we have volunteering for you all, for your own pleasure, and honestly for their own kind of brush up as well. They only get to do this once a year, so a lot of them actually enjoy being able to have that experience ahead of time. So some table of contents here, pretty self-explanatory. A disclaimer: don't use this for real world navigation, even though it does mirror the actual NOTAM. NOTAM, by the way, is brought to you by Schmindy on Instagram. You can find her. Her name's Mindy. She does aircraft brokerage. So really, really nice gal, married to a controller who's now actually transitioning into a pilot career. But if you're ever interested in buying or selling an airplane, be sure to check her out. We have some really important differences here, important to note, that is, between Sim and Fun and Sun and Fun. So for those of you who are planning to use this as a preparation event, keep in mind, yes, it is very realistic. However, I do want to make sure you're aware of the differences. Now, these are very self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go through them for the sake of time, but this will let you know what's going to be different in your real experience versus ours, which is, I will tell you, minimal, but important to note either way. All right, let's get into the bulk of it. So we've just got some definitions here, just some things to keep in mind. Middle of nowhere, fantasy of flight. We'll talk about all that later on, but these are just kind of some definitions of what that is. Quick overview of the event, lets you know what it's going to look like for you, and things like, it's not a race. You're not here to beat anyone. Make sure you have plenty of time. Don't try and squeeze this in with a 10-minute gap you have before putting the kids to bed at night or something like that. You want to make sure you have plenty of time to do this, and that will make for the best experience for you and all the others as well. Formation flights are not permitted. That is actually one of the differences from the real event. Again, some sim specific stuff. That's why we have separate NOTAMs, just some configuration items. All right, so pre-flight and planning. So the whole way this event works, you will fly in, of course. Now, the big difference in this event and the actual one, excuse me, is that when you fly in to the real one, you park your plane, you stay. A lot of people camp for the whole week, and then you leave when it's over. Well, of course, we're just simulating the flying portion of it. So for our events, most people actually fly in and taxi right back out for departure. So when you land at Lakeland, Florida, which is in the Orlando area, for those who may not be familiar, when you land at Lakeland, you have for Sim and Fun, you have two options. Option A, you're going to taxi to parking. Option B, you're going to taxi straight back for departure. Now, when you taxi to parking, you can either end your flight there, you could sit there and just kind of collect yourself for a while, and then head right back out for departure. It's really up to you. But the point is, you've got two options when you land, and you need to kind of have an idea of which one you're going to do. We'll get to that later. But my point in saying that is that you're going to begin by probably flying to Lakeland. So you're going to start at an airport other than Lakeland and join the Lake Parker arrival. You will have to file a VFR flight plan. That is also one of our differences than the real thing. That just is for our data tracking. Again, information here. I'm not here to read the NOTAM word by word. I'm just kind of here to explain it in more detail and give you some context behind everything. So when you're departing for Lakeland, you will load up at any airport you'd like and fly to Lakeland. Now, keep in mind, the PilotEdge coverage area, for those not familiar with PilotEdge, is only within this yellow shaded portion. Therefore, if you start up in Chicago or down in Atlanta, you will not have any ATC services until you get to Lakeland. And even when you get to Lakeland, there will be no radar services. It's just going to be the Lake Parker arrival portion. So don't expect flight following. Do not expect IFR. Just keep that in mind. But if you are, we do have some of our PilotEdge users who are actually flying across the country, starting in the Bay Area, San Francisco. If you're doing that, great. Have a great time. You're going to get full ATC all the way through the middle of the United States, and then you'll be terminated. It'll be basically class golf airspace from there. All right, so we're joining the Lake Parker arrival. Here comes the fun. Now let's talk about the Lake Parker arrival. It is only for fixed wing piston aircraft. Turboprops and jets need to fly the warbird arrival. We'll talk about that later. It's a lot less fun. But the Lake Parker arrival, that is the primary arrival here. And what you see here is taken right out of the real NOTAM, this map here, and we'll explain kind of what you're looking at here in a minute. But I've got a little checklist for you here. I want to preface everything real quick with saying a lot of this NOTAM is a little bit vague, and I will tell you that straight off that it is mirrored after the real NOTAM. So if our NOTAM seems vague, I can almost assure you the real NOTAM is at least as vague, if not more so. We made a deliberate effort, or I should say a deliberate choice, to not clarify things in the NOTAM, in our NOTAM, our version, that were not clarified in the real NOTAM. If you've been with us for SimVenture, I think you'll find this NOTAM is a little bit more vague and a little more confusing at times. But just know it's a conscious choice to make this as realistic as possible, and so we didn't want to give too much detail on things that you wouldn't have the detail on going into the actual airport. Now, having said that, if you have any questions, obviously this webinar is a great time to get those questions out. Our Discord, pilotedge.net/Discord, YouTube, post a comment, we'll get back to you. But as far as the NOTAM goes, if you're left with any questions, I would encourage you to check the real one, and you'd probably be left with the same questions. So hopefully that makes sense. We're not trying to make this hard for you. We're just trying to make it as realistic as possible. I do have a little checklist for you here. This is something we added just to kind of make it easy. Listen to ATIS. Make sure all your lights are on, landing gear down if you have one. Transponder set to mode C, squawk, and VFR. Altimeters, 2902. That's another difference, is your weather has to be set to beautiful weather conditions, clear skies, with a standard altimeter preset. That keeps everyone on a level playing field there. And then monitor Lake Parker arrival on 1245 is the last checklist item. So the reason it's important to monitor Lake Parker arrival and check that ATIS is because your very first thing you need to do is figure out where you're going to be joining this arrival. Are you going to be joining at the middle of nowhere transition, VPMNO, or the fantasy of flight transition, VPFSY? Now, those VP points aren't, the VPs are GPS waypoints that are VFR. They're VFR GPS waypoints. And if you've been with us for SimVenture, Oshkosh and SimVenture is much more visual, at least starting out. You can do everything visually. it's a little bit more challenging to do to fly visually, especially if you're going out to the middle of nowhere transition, because it is in fact in the middle of nowhere, and there is nothing there visually to represent that. So if you do not have a GPS or a ForeFlight or anything like that, it's going to be pretty hard to find that middle of nowhere transition. There is a reference here. It's kind of maybe small and hard to see, but 140 for 6 miles. I think it's a 6 over to VPFSY. So you can just make the reciprocal of that and figure out how to get, I guess 320 degrees for 5 or 6 miles off of VPFSY, and you can find it. But my point is, GPS will help you a lot, especially if they're starting out the middle of nowhere transition, which is during periods of high traffic volume. The Fantasy of Flight transition going to be the standard one. That's the one they'll be using if there's just a normal string of traffic. And eventually you're going to hit Fantasy of Flight anyways, even if you start over at middle of nowhere. So we'll get back to those in just a minute. Beginning at the designated transition point. So we already kind of talked about that. We'll pick up on that on the next page here. Here are the speeds and altitudes. This is critical. Approach the designated transition at 100 knots and 1,200 feet. This is for single engine piston aircraft. 100 knots, 1,200 feet. So at the time that you reach whatever transition point is in use, you should be on that speed and altitude. If you are unable 100 knots, maybe you're in something that some single engine that's just a little bit, too sporty to hold that speed comfortably. I don't want you to say, "Oh, well, I just want to go fast." No, that's not how this works. If you cannot comfortably and safely hold 100 knots, then you can go up to 150 knots and 1,700 feet. If you are a twin piston, you'll be up at 2,200 feet. So those are your 3 options: 100 knots, 1,200 feet, 150 knots, 1,700 feet, or twins at 2,200 feet. Pick out an aircraft similar type and altitude, follow half-mile and trail. So that means that you're only sequencing yourself with aircraft at your same altitude, who will inevitably be at the same speed, and half-mile and trail, no less than that. Do not overtake anyone, no S-turns. It's the same as SimVenture if you've been with us for that. Transition. So you get to the middle of nowhere transition or the Fantasy of Flight transition, you join that arrival. As you can see down the bottom right here, again, the transition points. A lot of lakes down there in Florida, of course. Lakeland, they're everywhere. So you'll see a lot of water on the way in. And as we hit that VPFSY, the Fantasy of Flight, we'll turn down to the southwest. Again, staying on speed and altitude. Don't be afraid to use that autopilot if you need to. It's not a shameful thing to do. If you need to, it's a little bit of help holding that altitude. It's very important that you're at altitude. So you hit that transition point, and your very next point, and I've got, this is another reason why we have specific NOTAMs for the sims, is so you can kind of see the what it's going to look like as you approach that point. Your next point, you're going to head southbound to the SunTrax Test Facility, VPTCK, if you're following along on your GPS. Now, this is just a pretty flat piece of land. It's pretty easy to see because of the cutout. This is a vehicle test track facility. So you'll be able to see it certainly from Fantasy of Flight when you roll out on that turn. It's only about a 3-mile leg there. And you're going to head just straight for it. Again, maintaining your altitude and speed. And then you're going to get directly overhead, and you're going to head to the southwest. You'll make a right turn to go southwest down to Lake Parker. Well, before you hit Lake Parker, actually, you're going to be going to the power plant. So this is a 7-mile leg from the racetrack, or I should say the SunTrax Test Facility, to Lake Parker, or the power plant. 7 miles on that southwestern heading. Now, Lake Parker is very easy to pick up after you turn to that southwesternly heading. It's going to be the bigger lake that's in front of you, and it's kind of got this little cutout on it on the northeast corner. You can see that actually better on this top-down view, this little cutout. It's pretty easy to spot. So you're going to head to the northern shore of Lake Parker. This little cutout is exactly where you're going to head, because as you get there, you will see the power plant. I've got these pictures here approaching VPKER, which is really approaching the power plant actually in this picture. The power plant is going to be your primary visual reference point to get to the North Shore. You need to make sure that your lights are on at this point, and you're going to head straight overhead the power plant. It actually says fly between the main power plant building and the large smokestack. So there's a large smokestack on the right, the main power plant building being on the left, a little bit farther out in this picture, so it's hard to see. But smokestack's on the right, main power plant building on the left, just split that gap perfectly. As you're overhead the power plant, let me back up a bit. As you get about a mile or two from the power plant, this is where ATC is going to start talking to you. So everywhere, everything before this, you're listening to the ATC on 124.5. They're talking a million miles a minute, talking about wing rocks and join the arrival at so and so transition and whatever it is. But you are going to. It's really not going to be for you unless they make some mass announcement of all aircraft do this. They're not talking to you until you get within about a mile or two of the power plant. So that's a bit of a trick you can use if they are absolutely not talking to you if you are over the SunTrack test facility. Now, unless they call you out by call sign or tail number rather, then you've probably gotten yourself in some trouble because they are using ADS-B out there now. They can see your tail number, but they only use that if they really need it. But unless you hear a tail number, if you're outside of a mile or two, they're not talking to you. So once you get within that mile or two, you got to listen up. You're listening for your type or color, typically. They might call you high wing, low wing. They're going to use aircraft characteristics because they're looking out at you. If you're curious, where are they? They're actually on the western shore. If you take a look at Google Maps, there's a fire department training facility just on the northwestern corner of Lake Parker. That is where they are. They go on top of that building. They put a big little awning over themselves. They get some lawn chairs, and they're working. So it's not as inviting as if you've ever been out to Fisk at Oshkosh. You can't really go hang out with these guys because they're kind of inside of a fire department facility. But that's where they are. They're on the western edge of the lake. They're looking out in binoculars at you as you approach from their east. So at some point, they'll tell you to rock your wings. Red Cessna over the power plant, red Cessna a mile outside the power plant, rock your wings. And you'll do such to indicate you hear them. That's the big thing here. You're likely not going to key that push to talk unless they ask you a question or unless you have a question or an emergency. Of course, any sort of safety of flight issues, whether it's an emergency or just a question, you want to make sure that you do key up that mic. Don't be scared and just ask that question. But if everything seems to be going well, you know what you're doing, you really shouldn't have a need to key up that mic. The controllers might ask you a question. Sometimes they do interact with you. Feel free to hit that mic button if they ask you something. So you're going to rock your wings. They're going to tell you to keep doing what you're doing, most likely. They'll start sequencing you a little bit as well. If there's someone maybe right on top of you on that higher, faster stream, they'll start kind of sequencing you all together because you'll start blending into one line as you join Interstate 4. Brings us to the next page. Big red text here, big red underline or highlight. Monitor Lakeland Tower 135225. This is critical. Don't forget that because you would hate to approach the airport and you're still listening to approach. After you get past the lake, Lake Parker arrival is not going to talk to you. And if they are trying to talk to you, it's probably because the tower called over saying, hey, can you try this guy again? Because he's not on us. So after you pass the lake, you're over to tower 135.225. Reaching Interstate 4. That's this southwesternly red line here that runs on the northwest corner of Lake Parker. So it runs to the southwest here. You're going to follow Interstate 4. As you join I-4, it's going to just be a quick 3 miles, and you're still maintaining that altitude. You're still on speed and altitude. You do not start down yet unless you're on that high stream and the Lake Park arrival told you to start down. So, of course, you're going to follow them. But if you're on that normal low stream, 100 knots, 1,200 feet, you stick with it. Directly over the interstate. As you approach the airport or get close to the airport, I should say, you're going to see a golf course off your left. Okay, that's the first kind of indication that you're getting close. That 3 mile leg is almost over. You'll see a golf course, very easy to spot in all 6 simulators. You need to keep that golf course off your left at all times. Do not cut in shy of the golf course. So keep that golf course off your left wing at all times. Do not overfly the golf course. Make sure it's off your left. After you pass the golf course, that is your key to turn left and go southbound. Again, keeping the golf course off your left at all times. You'll see another thing as you are dead ahead. Off the nose of your airplane is the white ball water tower. Looks like a white ball or a golf ball. It's just a water tower that's round, but it's going to be pretty easy to spot right off your nose here. You need to turn before the water tower. So you keep the water tower off your right, you keep the golf course off your left, and then there's one more visual reference point, which is the cake tower. To be honest with you, it's pretty hard to mess up the reference point of the cake tower if you've already achieved the keeping the golf course off your left and the white ball off your right. The cake tower, you just need to keep off your left as well. The cake tower is a water tower. It's at the public supermarket headquarters, so it looks like a birthday cake. That's why they call it cake tower, but it's just a water tower. It says Publix on it. And it's not super big, but you can spot it off your left. Hopefully, it's off your left. But again, I would say the biggest point of reference is the golf course, and then don't overshoot the white balls. Keep the white ball off your right, golf course off your left. Head due south for the airport. You're going to be golden.
And Kevin,
At this
quick
point,
question just
yes,
came in
go
from
ahead.
the chat,
Sure.
which I think is just great, perfectly relevant to
Absolutely.
what they're asking about here. Figuringstuffout.net, which is a great username also. Just asking about how easy it is to see the golf course, the ball tower, and the cake tower. They haven't installed the scenery yet, so is it pretty easy to spot these?
Super easy. Very easy. The golf course is very, very easy. The water tower off the nose, also easy. It's a little smaller, but you really can't miss it because if you notice, the interstate starts to turn here to the right. So you're just kind of looking right before that turn. You can't miss it. It's just on the left side of the interstate. And then the cake tower, again, I'd say out of the three, the cake tower is the hardest to spot just because there's a little more ground clutter around there. But if you're looking at it, you can certainly find it. And if you can't find it, as long as you kept that golf course off your left and the white ball off your right, you're going to be okay. Now, this is actually a great time for me to bring up, right as this webinar ends, there's a video that's going to drop on the PilotEdge YouTube that is a full arrival video of the Lake Park arrival flown in all three sims simultaneously. So you can actually, number one, it's kind of cool just to see the comparison between all three sims. But I provide some commentary throughout the 15-minute arrival about what to look for, what you're going to see, what you're going to hear. And so right after we get done with this webinar, go check out the PilotEdge YouTube, and you can actually find that 3-sim arrival video. You'll be able to see for yourself how easy it is in each of the 3 sims to spot those pieces of scenery. So good question. Thank you. So we're heading southbound now, right to the airport. This is the point where you can expect to hear from Lakeland Tower. This is where they're going to reach out to you during this southbound stint here. And again, you're listening for your type and color. You will continue to maintain your speed and altitude until told otherwise. So don't start descending on your own. Tower will call your descent. As you head straight down to the south here, you are going to look for, so we talked about those 3, golf course, cake tower, white ball. The next thing you're looking for, and this is pretty important, is the V-shaped building. Now, it's a V-shape looking at it from this top-down perspective, north up, but it's actually going to be an upside-down V for you coming from the north. Honestly, it looks a little more like a boomerang than a V. It's not a perfect V, but if you want to check it out on Google Maps ahead of time, it's clearly a V-ish shape. And also that video I just referenced, you'll be able to see that as well. So V-shaped building, you're going to want to head directly for the V-shaped building to overfly that. It's almost serves as an arrow also. You're kind of almost like these black arrows, and you're kind of heading that way. By the V-shaped tower, or, I'm sorry, by the V-shaped building, tower is likely talking to you or about to talk to you. So you've got to be listening up. They may have you rock your wings, or they might just tell you to start your downwind. They'll tell you, left or right downwind, or they'll just tell you to start your downwind. You should already know which downwind you're going for because you've listened for the ATIS. You know which runway is in use. But of course, if you're unsure, don't be afraid to key up and ask. But hopefully, you know that going in which runway is in use. The very last visual reference point is going to be the blue roof terminal building. Now, admittedly, it is not the easiest spot in every sim. If you're using FSX or Prepared, it's very big and easy. If you're using Microsoft or X-Plane, maybe hit or miss. But just know that the blue roof terminal it's just the terminal building of the airport, which is on the northeast side here. And I made it nice big blue box here so you can tell. It's just going to be due south of the V-shaped building is all. So as long as you're overhead the V-shape, continuous southbound, you're going to be in the right spot. But the tower might reference that. That's what they're talking about there. Drainfield Road is this east-west road here. they want you to keep your downwind pretty much right over or inside of that. So expect to turn a pretty tight downwind. All right, we're going to continue onwards to our final approaches. Now, off of the Lake Parker arrival, you're going to only have 2 landing runway options. That's 10 left or 28 right. 10 left is what we'll start with. That's what we have here on page 12 of the NOTAM. It is the skinny runway with the dots on it. Do not mistake it for runway 10 right. Here's why that is so critical and why it is highlighted, despite the obvious of not wanting to mistake runways. It's because it's not actually a runway. If you take a look at the airport diagram, it is usually a taxiway, but it is converted into a runway for Sun and Fun / Sim and Fun. So this actually is taken right out of the NOTAM from the real Sun and Fun. Again, trying to keep it as realistic as possible. And we use their exact Microsoft Paint graphics here, tongue in cheek. So you're looking at this, and this is 10 right. The big real runway looking thing. It's a thick runway. Over here to the left is a taxiway alpha specifically if you're looking on the airport diagram. However, this is runway 10 left. All right, so keep that in mind, 10 left. If you are flying Lake Park arrival, you will land on the skinny runway unless specifically told to do otherwise. So you're planning on 10 left or 10 left or 28 right from the other side. But we're talking 10 left right now. So we make that, we would end up coming in with a left downwind, and we're going to turn right to enter the left downwind, and we're going to keep it tight. Tower is likely going to call our downwind and our base turn. You got our landing distance runway, landing distances there if you're interested. Now here's our dots. We have the green and the orange dot. 2 dots. That's all we got. It's Sun and Fun. 2 dots. 1 runway, 2 dots, and those are your aiming points. Now, important to also note, displace threshold. It's also really important. Displace threshold. Displace threshold. I'll say it again. Displace threshold. Each runway, 10 left and 10 right, have a significant displace threshold. Now, if you're aiming for the dots on 10 left, you're not really going to mess this up because the dots are where you're going to touch down anyways. So therefore, you're going to make sure you hit the threshold or get beyond it. I mean, but just keep in mind, you will not be putting this down on the beginning of the pavement. Significant displace threshold there. After touchdown, this is important, and everyone needs to be familiar with this. Again, this is a bit of a sim venture. I'm sorry. I'm surprised it's the first time that's happened. Sim and Fun-ism is where you need to kind of know what you're doing after you touch down. After you land, high-speed taxi to the end of the runway onto taxiway Charlie. That's just the end of the runway. You're literally high-speed taxi all the way down to the end. And a right turn onto Charlie. So everyone's going to exit to the right. This is runway 10 right. This is runway 10 left arrivals. Everyone exits to the right. Do not stop on the runway. Number 1, first and foremost, do not stop on the runway. But after you've exited it on taxiway Charlie, you're going to cross 10 right on your own. And there's a sign there in all the sims that says do not stop unless advised. So if ATC tells you to stop, then absolutely you're going to stop. But unlike normal operations, you will not hold short. There is a hold short line that's just there because usually it is a real airport doing real hold short things, but not for Sun and Fun, Sim and Fun. So you will cross that runway unless you're told to hold short. That's 10 right. Then keep in mind, taxi to parking versus taxi departure. You kind of need to know what your plan is when you land. If you're going to taxi to parking, follow the flagman until you see signage for parking. So you're going to just keep following the flagmen that you're going to see. They'll show up during the event in your sim. We're going to inject them into your sim in real time until you see those signs that point to parking. And then you follow the signs for parking. So if you're going to parking, follow the flagman until you see the parking signs, and then stop following the flagman and head for the parking signs. If you're going back, if your plan is to go and taxi right back for departure, follow the flagman, period. The flagman will always direct you in the direction of the departure runway. So that goes for if you're starting your flight at Lakeland or you're just landing, you want to taxi back, the flagman will always point you to the departure runway. All right, let's continue. 28 right, same thing, but opposite direction. Again, taken right out of the real NOTAM. 28 left, 28 right. This time it's orange dot, green dot, just because we're coming from a different direction there. And Anthony wanted me to specify that 28 right doesn't have a traditional downwind. it's expect the approach to be an extended base from the V building. So essentially, you're going to kind of keep going straight off the V-shaped building, or maybe not turn downwind at all. And airplanes really usually don't fly east of runway 23. So expect some dog legs aimed at the dots. So maybe a little bit of a short approach feel. Well, I don't want to say that, but it's going to be kind of straight on the base to the final, maybe skipping the downwind if you're coming off a 2A, if you're coming in the 2A right, is what Anthony wanted me to mention. So thanks, AS. So we're so this kind of 2A right, orange dot, green dot, same thing. You're not going to land on 2A left unless they tell you otherwise. And you're going to, this time, same thing. You're going to roll all the way down to the end after touchdown, high speed all the way to the end. You're going to left on Alpha 1, which is the end. Same sort of thing. Do not stop. Cross 28 left unless you're instructed to stop. And then, exact same thing. If you're going to taxi to parking, follow the flagman until you see the signs for parking. If you're going to taxi back for departure, just keep following the flagman. They want you out of there. They're going to point you toward the runway. And by the way, that guidance for the base term was from the real controllers. So it's those are the controllers that are telling us how they work and how they're going to work the pattern here for Lakeland. All right, into holding. So will we have to hold? I don't know. We'll see. It's a dynamic event. You never know what can happen. Holding is pretty self-explanatory, straightforward though. You're just going to hold around the lake in a clockwise direction as instructed by ATC. So they'll tell you to start holding. I'm sorry, I said clockwise. I meant counterclockwise. It is the direction of the arrows, and it's also what it says here. Counterclockwise around the lake. And they'll tell you if it gets full and you have to leave and go back to VPFSY and start it again. But they'll tell you this is just a graphical version of it though. You will maintain your speed and altitude in the hold, 100 knots or 1,200 feet or so forth if you're at a different altitude. Skydiving advisory, watch out northwest of the airport. If you are flying in or out of that direction, there will be skydiving airplanes out there. Yes, they will be there. Watch out for them. Don't hit them. All the information is here for you to be mindful of that. It's just barely northwest of the airport. All right, let's talk about jets and turboprops. First and foremost, if you are not a piston, by the way, we'll talk about departures here in a second. If you do want to fly a small jet or a turboprop into Sim and Fun, all the power to you, good for you, but please make sure you are proficient in doing so. I wouldn't expect, if you're really unfamiliar with sims or VFR procedures, this probably isn't good for you. You should probably stick to the Skyhawks or some slow single engine prop. And that's not a knock on you. Most people fly the Skyhawks and all the slower single engine pistons. But if you do feel like you are capable and proficient to fly a small jet or a turboprop, we do have that ability for you, mirroring the real world event. It's called the Warbird South Arrival. Keep in mind, jets are limited to maximum takeoff weights of less than or equal to 18,000 pounds. There's a list here. You can click and find that to see if your jet qualifies. Or turboprops as well, of any weight, really. Will allow you to do any weight. Full disclosure, this arrival is boring. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend flying it unless maybe you've already had your fix of the Lake Park arrival. This is very much more like just flying into any class Delta. You will contact the tower verbally on 12035. You'll tell them where you are, and you'll tell them, you'll just make that report. You just got examples here. I'm not going to get too far into it because statistically only about 3 or 5% of you are going to fly this. They'll tell you what to do. They'll tell you, and then you're going to have to report as you get a little bit closer. They'll give you your pattern entry. Again, it's a lot like just flying into a normal airport. So less exciting in my opinion, but you can do it if you'd like. After touchdown, you got some same things here, but it's you're not going to have that runway crossing issue because, again, you're exiting to the south and there is no runway to cross there. Got some frequencies for reference if you need them. And departures. Here we go. Departing Lakeland. So this will apply to you either if you're starting your day at Lakeland. Maybe you're starting your whole flight at Lakeland, or you have landed and you are taxiing back for departure. Now, if it's the latter, some of this won't apply. Well, I guess most of it still does. As far as starting in the yellow shaded area, that's only if you're spawning there. If you're going to start there, start your flight there, start your day there. Obviously, you're just going to be following the flagmen if you landed there. So it's got all the information here. It's got a little checklist, monitor ATIS, squawk mode C, 1200 VFR. Be ready to go upon reaching the hold short line. That's big. Don't get to the runway and expect to do a run up. There's no place for it. There's no time for it. So do any run ups either on the taxi or before you leave the parking area. Monitor 12785. Really before you even leave the parking area is the best way to do it. As you leave the parking area, assuming you're starting there and leaving the parking area, which is this yellow shaded, follow the flagmen. They'll direct you either left or right out of the out of the area there, and they'll get you to the runway. Do not check in with the tower as you get to the runway. If you're getting there and there's just silence, then I'd recommend you check your radios. There's probably something wrong. If there's silence and you feel like everything's okay, feel free to key up and see if anyone's home. But again, it most likely is you. They'll call you when you're number one in line for takeoff. You won't have to call them. Again, they'll use your type or color, or they might be more inclined to use your tail number on the ground there, since they're right there next to the runway looking right at your airplane from 30 feet away. They do have a waiver, just like Oshkosh does, to line up left and right sides of the runway. So you might be told to line up and wait on the left half versus the right half. Just follow the instructions there. Reback's not required. Again, they're just, there's no wing rocking on the ground, but they're going to see you move and they're going to know that you heard their instruction. Remain on the tower frequency until clear the class Delta. Now, what do you do when you depart? Well, it's pretty easy, honestly. Straight out for 3 miles, then turn on course. I mean, it doesn't get much easier. So just keep going straight for 3 miles, then you're going to head right on course. Now, avoid the Lake Parker and Lake Hancock. Those are just basically avoid the Lake Parker arrival is the key thing there. Especially if you're low altitude, try and gain some altitude in that 3 miles straight out. That'll help you later on. Once you're above 3,000, above 3,500, you're not really going to be a factor for any of that arrival traffic. So you can take a little breath there. Use caution for that skydiving activity I talked about on the previous page if you are heading to the northwest. Chopper Town, I'm not going to spend much time on this, but if you do want to fly a helicopter in, you're welcome to do it with these real-world procedures. There is no ATC involved. It's entirely non-towered, but you will still have to follow these procedures in the northeastern quadrant of the airfield. All right, Winter Haven. This is the offloader airport. If you join us for SimVenture, this is the Fond du Lac of Lakeland. This is the offloader. It's a temporary tower at a usual non-towered airport. It's about 10 to 15 miles to the east of Lakeland, northeast. You can see Lakeland down here. And this is a great place to begin your day and end your day. It's a great place to start. You head due north, get in line for the Lake Parker arrival from there. It's a great place to end. You depart Lakeland, you fly eastbound for a few miles, you land. This is very much like a Class Delta. It's not a Class D. There is no actual Class D airspace. There is, but the airspace within 3 miles and 1,600 feet is towered. So, just call it a tower, I guess is the easiest way I can put it. 19.22, 119.22 is a temporary tower frequency. It's going to work just like a normal Class Delta would. You're going to call them up with your the tail number. You're not going to use types and colors out here. It's going to feel very much like a standard Class Delta when you're out here. There is no ground control. It's just all combined on the 119.22, but you will still call for ground. Sorry, that might have been confusing. You will still call for taxi. It's just all on one frequency. So very normal-ish ops over at Winter Haven Tower. Just keep in mind, every year for SimVenture, we have people that are just departing and landing at Fond du Lac without talking to ATC. I guarantee it's going to happen at Winter Haven as well, but don't let it be you. Just know that there is a tower controller there, temporary tower, 119.22. Start in that yellow shaded area if you're starting at Winter Haven. We do have, this is important, for scenery, to keep all the scenery similar, we actually reverted back to an old plan, an old taxi diagram of Winter Haven. That's what you're looking at here. Do not use the real world taxi diagram. If you have ForeFlight, if you're using AirNav, SkyVector, whatever, use this one in the NOTAM from Winter Haven. If you pull up the real world one, it's just going to confuse you because all the taxiway letters are different and they're actually new taxiways now. But it was easier for us to keep everyone on the same page across all sim platforms by reverting back to the old, which is just about this is about 2 years ago. This is really relevant or really new that they've renovated the airport. But just use this diagram is all I'm trying to say, and you'll have no issue with it. Dynamic flagman, I mentioned those a little bit earlier. These are injected in real time into your sim. If you load up the sim now and go over there, you're not going to see them, but they will show up for the actual event. They will point you, like I said, to the departure runway, or if you're going to parking, follow them until you see signs for parking. Moving map applications, I'd recommend using a moving map throughout this just to spot traffic and help see traffic a little bit easier. It can be hard to see traffic in the sim, not impossible, but a little bit difficult. This will help you keep your situational awareness up a little bit. Little spoiler alert here. It's progressive taxi instructions. It just basically, if you get a little bit lost, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but if you get lost, just refer to the bottom of the NOTAM, and that'll kind of help you get where you need to go, whether you're taxiing to parking or the runway at Lakeland. Some FAQs here and acknowledgments, and look at that, we've made it through. So I will turn it over to Evan at this point for any questions that may have come in. Thank you all, and feel free to ask any questions about the procedure or the event in general.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Kevin. Nice for me to be able to get a sense as to how this all works. First time for me. I've seen the SimVenture presentation now a couple times, and so it's nice to see this. And I just love that they named a point in the middle of nowhere. That just sounds perfect for Sun and Fun. So, folks, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat if you're watching on the Flight Sim Association YouTube channel, or if you're watching on PilotEdge ATC's YouTube channel. I'm watching both. Any questions that you might have, feel free to drop those in the chat here. Got a couple questions here from the chat that we can go through. Actually, I'll just start with this one that just came in. FiguringStuffOut.net again, who I think sounds like is a real-world pilot and flown this approach in real life a couple times.
Great.
Was just asking if you could shout out the event sponsor once more here at the end. I think the sponsor of the notice, the NOTAM.
Yes, yeah, Schmindy. Yeah, Mindy. She's great. At Schmindy on Instagram. She's got a great following and really great to work with. She's really in big support of our event, so we appreciate her and everything she does. And it, like I said, if you ever need an airplane or looking to buy or sell an airplane, that's what she's doing now. And she flies all around the country, ferrying airplanes to clients and showing them off to others.
Can I have that job?
I think, yeah. It seems like she's got a pretty fun life.
I know, right? I think it sounds lovely. So, Kevin, how many pilots kind of do you expect will be flying into the Sim and Fun event? Is it going to feel busy most of the time, do you think?
You know, similar to SimVenture to year one, we really have no expectations. Now, if SimVenture was any indication, it will be very busy. But at the same time, you have to understand that Sun and Fun is a quarter as busy as Oshkosh is, as AirVenture is. I'm talking real world. So obviously we're a little bit different in the sim world where whether that's because of, it's Oshkosh is a little more centrally located in the United States or whatever it might be. I couldn't tell you. And obviously the same exact number of people have the exact same opportunity to participate in Sim and Fun, but I really have no expectations. I hope it's very busy. Now we are only running it for 6 hours across 2 days. That's in comparison to usually about 13 to 14 hours across 4 days that we do SimVenture. So I'm guessing, we're going to be compressing everything into just 2 days and 6 hours. So it might feel busier because of that. And because it's our first year, we just kind of wanted to start small. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, nice. Absolutely. It's great to see this stuff happening. I wanted to ask a little bit of the controllers who participate in both the virtual and the real Sun and Fun. So maybe starting with the real Sun and Fun first. Are these the controllers who would be working in this airspace normally? Do they bring in people from around the country? Do you have a sense as to how that works?
Absolutely. So it is not those who are usually working the airspace. So those in Lakeland Tower who are there for 51 weeks out of the year. It's the same as Oshkosh, actually. So if you're familiar with Oshkosh, it's the same. But if you're not unfamiliar, the Lakeland tower controllers move out for a week, and controllers from all over the country, primarily the central and eastern parts of the country. However, not unheard of to get western portion controllers out there as well. But they bid on this just short 1 week temporary assignment. It is a volunteer basis. Now they still retain their pay. They're not just getting $0 to work there. What I'm saying is they're not getting any bonus. There's no skin in the game for them to do this. It's just purely because they love it. And so they go and they have a team of, gosh, I think it's around 80 or so, 80 or 90 controllers from all around the country who fly in, and they spend a day and a half doing some training, both classroom and driving around to get a lay of the land of everything. And then the arrivals start coming in. Each group is a team of 4 controllers, and so they've got roughly 20 teams or so. Those controllers consist of a rookie, and then basically a rookie and 3 other people who've done it before, kind of ranging in seniority. So the rookie's kind of taken under the wing, and generally it's the rookie oftentimes that's on the mic. But what you may not know is the rookie is typically just parroting what the other 3 controllers are saying. And the other 3 controllers are responsible for looking out the windows and looking at the airplanes, and they're kind of shouting instructions to the person who's on the mic. Not to say it's always the rookie. Certainly the veterans get on the mic too, but they certainly want to get the rookies that time on the radio so they can start getting an idea of it and hopefully come back next year. We actually have a really informational video of how Oshkosh ATC works on the PilotEdge YouTube page. And it's going to, again, very similar structure to how Sun and Fun works. So check that out. We dropped that about 2 years ago. But that's on the YouTube page there.
Nice. So that's sort of the real life version. And then how does that work in PilotEdge terms? So these are, in some cases, the actual controllers who will work the real Sun and Fun. But
Correct.
I guess you give them some familiarity with how to get on PilotEdge and how that all works too, right?
We do, yeah. We don't call it training. We just call it familiarization with basically how this is just going to work from their computers. And so we just kind of give them a lay of the land. We've let them know how to sign in and how to turn on their radios and their frequencies and make sure the headset's working. And there's nothing to teach them after that. They are the pros. They are the ones who do this for real. And so the voices you're hearing in Sim and Fun are voices you may recognize from the past, or voices that you're going to hear in 3 or 4 weeks after the fact at the real show.
Yeah, and do they, I imagine with it being the sim, it's not quite as easy to look out windows and grab binoculars and stuff. So are they using maybe some other tools that we have in flight sim, or is it a lot of just visual stuff like in real life?
They do use visual stuff. They certainly have visual cues to recognize what those airplanes are that are coming over the power plant and approaching the airport. And so they can see those wing rocks, and they know if you're given a good rock or a weak rock. And so we do give them tools to make this event possible and to make it as realistic as we can for both the controllers and the pilots.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I think that covers the questions that I've seen and great comments in the chat throughout. Anything that you want to wrap up with, Kevin, and leave folks with as we get set to wrap things up here tonight?
I would just encourage everyone to follow PilotEdge on social media. Check out the YouTube channel. Like I said earlier, that video is dropping in about 60 seconds for that Lake Parker arrival demonstration that'll show all 3 sims simultaneously. And especially after this NOTAM review, it'll be, I think, really beneficial to see that. It's just about a 14.5-minute video to see kind of all of what we just talked about put into action for that Lake Parker arrival.
Nice, Kevin. Well, thanks so much again for being on and for sharing this with us. It's great to see PilotEdge and Sun and Fun teaming up with this kind of stuff. Like I said earlier, anything that gets us more in tune between real world and flight simulation is something that's meaningful to me, and I think really should be to all of us in flight sim. So appreciate you taking the time to do this, not just the NOTAM review, of course, but also the entire event. Doing this for the first time with Sun and Fun now, and of course it's been, I think, 5 or 6 years now with us doing this at SimVenture and Oshkosh. And for those of you who are coming to Sun and Fun, come say hi. I'll be there at the Bueller Hangar all week, Tuesday through to Sunday. I see there's a couple of you on the stream that are planning to fly yourselves in or be driving in like I'll be doing. So please feel free to come by and say hi. FiguringStuffOut.net says hit that thumbs up, and I agree, that certainly is appreciated. And feel free to check out Flight Simulation Association if you haven't. A friendly reminder, I said at the beginning of the stream too, but I'll just remind you again, if you're interested in Flight Sim Expo, our dedicated Flight Sim convention, our exhibitor reveal is March 29th, happening right here on this YouTube channel. So feel free to come by and join us then. And until then, it's been a pleasure to be here talking with you all and hanging out with Kevin. We'll see you if you're going to Flight Sim Weekend in the Netherlands. See you in Lakeland if you're going to Sun and Fun, and see you in Providence if you're going to Flight Sim Expo. Until then, thanks to Kevin, and have a wonderful night, everybody.